What's up, world, digital world? I haven't said that line in a long time. And if you're an OG I Digress listener, you're probably like, wow, we went way, way back. But I'm doing it because it's worthy, because homie is making changes to his brand presence, to his positioning, and it's all thanks to this amazing chief strategist, brand extraordinaire, hip hop enthusiast for the culture, for the business, for all the things. Evante Daniels, we appreciate you dropping this masterclass for I Digress. How are you doing?
Yo, I'm doing good, Troy. Thank you so much for having me on, bro. It's exciting to get to catch up now that we've walked through your brand and through your strategy.
For real. And we talk about this, but I think people don't realize it. When you're a consultant, there's only so much you can do on your own.
Yeah.
If I could give my own self the strategy hackers impact all the time, I wouldn't need anybody. But it doesn't work that way. We can be
Right.
very narrow-minded in our approach, in our delivery. And to be frank, first of all, Evante is smooth as I don't know what. If y'all need to learn how to slide in someone's DMs for business, he got the language on how to do that, because the way he went through, I was like, oh my Lord. And before I know, I'm on a call. Next thing I know, the money is exchanged. We're doing the conversation, we're doing the dance. And next thing I know, I'm like, so this is my new brand now? This is how I show up in rooms now?
Yeah.
So smooth. We'll dive in deeper to that, but y'all know how I do on the show. I got to set the stage. And so I'm sitting here realizing something isn't working. And if you're a business leader for any type of length of time, a thought leader, an executive, you're launching a business, you have all the years of experience, sometimes it's not enough. If we can be real, sometimes we get to a plateau where I need help. I need assistance. So Evante, if you don't mind, walk me through your process of how I was and how you look through the lens of walking me through, my guidelines and everything.
Yeah, man. Well, so working in strategy is fun. I just want to go ahead and say that. They're like, if you're one of those dudes who loves strategy, they're like, strategy is the jam. That's where I live, is how do we think through solving problems? And most problems, that's usually what I tell people, and I'm pretty sure I told you this on my pitch call, was like 90% of issues come down to either what's communicated or how it's perceived. That's really the two middle grounds. And both of those fall into marketing when we talk about it. When I'm getting to meet people like you who are deep in build mode, you're head down focused on your work, then that also means you're not looking up and seeing everything else that's going on around you. So there's a limited perspective, but we don't get to pay attention to how we're communicating and how our communication is perceived, right? That's just not possible. Even how I'm talking right now, if I go back and listen to this episode, I'm sure I'm gonna be like, oh my God, I said that? Like, that's gonna but in the moment, I can't do both. So for me, in getting to know you and getting to know the podcast and the work that you're doing, it's really to start off by saying, well, first off, who are you? And what are you trying to communicate? Before we even get into what you're saying and how it's being received, what are we trying to achieve here? Right. And starting there. And I think that was probably our favorite conversation, was diving into like, yo, what do you want to do? Like, where is this? What's the point of what you're doing right now? Where do you want this to go? And for some folk, that's a really scary question, because they'd be, you'd be running on a treadmill and you don't really think about where the treadmill's going. Right. But motion always leads to direction. And so as a strategist, to go like, yo, you're not putting time into emptiness, even if it feels that way, right? And that's going to continue to lead to spaces. And so as a strategist, is going to go like, yo, it doesn't matter how fast you get there. We just want to talk about direction. And then from there, it's about collaboration. And it's about saying, okay, if this is the way we need to move, this is where we want to go, then in talking through with you, it's like, well, who do we need to get there? Not from a side of like, oh, I need to check these people off of a list and let me go hit these people on LinkedIn with my smooth DMs, right? But it's like, if I had to make cool connects with people to get this thing done, who would those people be? Who would trust me? Who would be in my corner? Who would work with me? Because now we have direction, all of the rest of those pieces for me feel like dominoes, because I'm able to kind of say, okay, cool. We want to turn this into a larger platform. We want this to be a space for these conversations. We want this to inspire the next generation of business folk. And the people that we need to do that are in college right now. So how do we get to in front of college folk? And so I think that was one of the biggest parts in our strategy work together, was say, we have this amazing platform. We have this amazing show. How do we get it in front of the people who need it most?
That's the hard thing. What I loved about the exercises, transparently, and I'm speaking for a lot of people here because I'm sure they fall into this trap too, is like, we see brand as one dimensional. We don't see it as layering. And we don't see brand of what it could be. we see brand for what it is now. If Michael Jordan only position of what he was in that moment and not what he was chasing for, he wouldn't be the GOAT. He wouldn't be who he is.
Period.
Or anyone, insert whatever analogy, whatever person you look up to type of vibes. Like, we have to position ourselves for who we want to be and lean into that direction.
Yeah.
Then just be standing here and saying, here's where we're at now. No one wants that.
Right.
They want winners.
Right.
I'm not about faking it until you make it. But you at least got to position yourself like, I am him, I am her, I am them, I am all of them. We're trying to make this thing happen. This is why I believe in me. And people experience that. So from your end, this is a two-part question. One, what does brand mean to you? And what is the biggest pet peeve you have about the misconception of brand?
Ooh, I can do this as a twofold. I like this question. As you saw, I started cackling even before you got the second half out. I'm going to answer it together. Branding is not visual identity. My biggest pet peeve in branding is that when people talk branding, they're like, let's talk logo. Dog, no, please, I'm begging you. Just give me mercy, give me a break, give me grace. Like, branding is not just your color scheme or your typography or how your website looks. It's not about how those things are. It's part of it. But what branding is about perception. It's about how someone literally sees you and what they take away from how they see you. I like to say we get this as Black folk immediately. Growing up, you knew the difference between wearing a pair of Keds and wearing a pair of Air Force Ones to school. And you were talked to completely different by even the teachers in the situation. Like, just out the gate. And so you knew when your mom was like, nah, you gonna get them Keds. You were like, bro, you are ruining my social capital. You destroying everything that I've built so far. And then, some other dude who's a total joker shows up in some New brand Air Force Ones and suddenly he's at the top of the class and all this other foolishness, right? Like, that was our childhood. Nothing's changed.
I'm dead, y'all. I'm dead.
We still have to deal with the situation. But now we know, right? Now we understand the reality of the situation. They're like, yo, there's a time to wear Keds. There's a time not to wear your Keds. The situation is depending on the environment. It's depending on who's around you. It's depending on how they are going to see that shoe. And as much as I love it to just be off of what I feel and what I like and what sticks to me, that means I would be wearing sweats every single day for the rest of my life because it's comfortable. I'm having a great time. And that's all I want to wear. But we live in a world where I got to go to meetings. I got to meet people who I want to be clients, right? And I want to get to know them. And me showing up in sweats does not necessarily send the message, I'm that guy.
Unfortunately.
This is, like that's where we live, right? And so like on a personal level, we get this. That's why we dress up for stuff. That's why we show up in different ways. The same thing applies to companies. And so that's the part where a lot of people go, oh, it's just logo, type, all those things, because it becomes this really big, messy, interdimensional pile when you're talking about a company, because suddenly you've got employees. Even if it's just you may have that admin at email that still goes back over to you. So you have an assistant or whatever, right? But it gives the impression of there being two people on staff, or you have a sales guy who says something a certain way. Suddenly that's someone's perception of the entire company. And this is why, companies freak when we talk about like making sure that your sales language is good, or that your elevator pitch is good, or that like this piece of language is critical, is because for that one customer or that one person or that one investor or that one vendor, this is going to shape the entire perspective of how they view who your company is and what they do. That's so much more than a logo. And it comes down to so much more than a logo. We all know the jokes on Black Friday. They're like, yo, you could show up in a Target in a red polo and like khakis and like just walk into Target. It's because people think you work there. That's branding. The fact that like Target is known for a red shirt and khaki pants is part of what makes you know, oh, I can go talk to that dude. And we pick up on these things all the time. The way that you go to Chick-fil-A and they say, have a blessed day. Or if you say, thank you, they say, my pleasure. Thank you. I was trying to remember the one. They have those pieces that come out and you may go, that's really funny that they say it all the time. But every time you go to Chick-fil-A, they're going to say it.
Or you get mad when they don't say, like, excuse me.
Excuse me, I
didn't get my pleasure. Like, what's going on?
I just get angry. Right? Give me my chicken minis and no my pleasure. What's going on? right? But that's branding. And so like a lot of times when you deal with brand strategy, you deal with brand designers, they look at it purely from a visual standpoint. And they're like, yo, this is what your website looks like. Congratulations. And it's fantastic, it's sexy design, but then you didn't design it for people who are ADA accessibly or need those compliance issues. Or the copy on the page is just too messy. It reads like somebody wrote it from inside the industry. It's pieces like that that really set aside branding. And so my pet peeve with branding consistently is that someone will go like, I rebranded my company and it's a new logo. And that's it. And like, that's the end of the project.
Congratulations.
Right? Like, what did that mean? Why did you put the money into
I'm about to get another zero in my business right now. I'm like, okay.
Like, I hope. I mean, like, I hope it works out for you. It's never worked out for anybody I knew, but like, good luck.
I want to double down on the point you made about the red shirt and the khakis from Target. Because here's the thing people deal with branding. You could also say, well, hey, if I wore a red shirt and khakis at a State Farm, people think I work for State Farm. Well, I don't want people to steal my thing. If I create this thing, someone just told me my thing, my positioning, I sound like this person, I look like this person, I come across like this person, and then I don't know what my identity is anymore. I'm not trying to follow nobody. What do you say to the people who are so obsessively trying to match whatever they are as a branding, positioning to someone else? What do you tell them?
To keep from being too tongue-in-cheek, I'm going to have to fall back on industry language for a second and just say that market differentiation is maybe 2%, in all honesty. Compare Walmart to Target for a second. They're both big brand grocery stores. They both carry a variety of items going from household to automotive to clothing to groceries. They both have a similar layout. What's the difference? The lighting, the color, and the Target mops them floors. Like, and that makes a difference for a lot of people. They're like, oh, well, Target's more expensive. It's this higher quality version and all this other stuff. It's the same store. There is a 3% difference between those two stores when you really break it down, and your customer can't deal with more than a 5% difference. We have to, one, understand how much of an X factor we really have in a situation and how important that is. Same thing for seasoning, same of any situation, right? You put too much and suddenly ain't nobody eating that. That's way too much salt. I don't know what you did to that thing. Start over. And it becomes like, well, this was weird, dog. Like, and you don't want that experience for a company. And so a lot of times when people are like, nah, this is my thing, this is me being different, it's like, yes, you're unique. You're a fantastic, multifaceted, multidisciplinary individual, just like everybody else. And we have to understand where our uniqueness fits in there, right? That there is a part that makes us different, whether that's the dog or the red or these pieces. But we also got to understand that there's a standard that's being set by the entire picture. And so when you see a company try to do too many different strange things at one time, they end up losing their base. They end up losing their culture because people can only deal with a little bit of change at a time. If you get too excited on the differentiator, what makes you different, and you hone on that over and over and over again, then people won't be able to relate. Now, personally, there's an ego side to this that makes us think that these other companies were super ingenuitive and came up with this stuff from like a deeper level, and that, this is how the great minds thought about these companies when they were first getting started. No, sir, that's not how that happened. Okay, what happened is over time, they learned about their customer and they learned what their customer enjoyed and what worked well for their customer. The original layout for Walmart, the original layout for Target, we don't use those layouts anymore. And it's not because of just a genius idea, it's because of behavioral research. They said, oh, this is how we can make the store a better experience. And they came to the same conclusion regardless if they use the same company or not. And so rather than fighting to be different, know what makes you unique, know the thing that sets you apart, but look at the industry and learn from it. If this is a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company that is bringing in billions a year and you're trying to understand how to tap the same market, look at how they did it. You may not have all the capital, all the resources. That's part of what's going to set you apart. So you can't do it just like they did. But if you're able to look at that, we call that stealing like an artist. It's to put your own take on what's in front of you. When we get too caught up on making it completely unique and completely different, it's like creating art without looking at color theory. It ain't going to work well. And even if you're like, I've never looked at color theory, I guarantee you that nice art piece you created used color theory.
For real. I think people don't realize how deep all of this goes and how much goes into it
Yeah.
beyond the logo. And I don't know if we answered the question on what your pet peeve is. Was your pet peeve that people
was my
only
pet
think?
peeve. That was
Okay, okay. I wanted to clarify that. Like, I want that to be spelled out for
Yeah.
real. My pet peeve is y'all always think it's all about the logo and branding.
Yeah, my pet peeve is that when people talk branding, they talk visual identity exclusively.
I think it's very obvious, but for those who are listening and not watching, we are both Black. Proud Black business owners, creators, visualizers, speakers, and a lot of different things. We are multi-potentialites and we are proud of it. And we've been having conversations, one, you consulting me and my brand, but also just as colleagues, as friends, and how we're navigating in these trenches out here in these streets trying to get these bags. One thing I want to bring out, however comfortable you feel like expounding on this journey with me, is that sometimes when we're trying to position our business as Black businesses, and people, you'll know what I'm saying. And for those who are non-BIPOC, it's okay. This is good for your knowledge as well and awareness. There's gauges to how we have to present our business. One is to who, and this is what you have to meet too on the branding side, but also on the strategy and business side. We got to know, I always say this, you either meet the demand of the marketplace or you create the demand. And a lot of people who are BIPOC businesses think they're just going to create the demand because I could do bad all by myself. And they are humbled immediately, realizing that only 0.0001% of people actually create new demand in an existing marketplace or a new marketplace. I mean, an existing marketplace or a new marketplace, because it's very rare to do. It's too hard. Why don't you follow the path that people have already carved and then make yourself unique to you? But we internalizedly struggle in that dynamic. We struggle with, I want to do impact first, but if you have no money, you're going to be broke. Therefore, you can't do impact. How do you gauge either for yourself or your clients? You advise on, how do I show my most authentic self, but still put myself in the best position for growth as a brand?
You know, it's funny you bring that up because, like, when I launched my consultancy Seeqer, my first focus was super impact. I was like, we going nonprofit. We going to work with all the orgs. I'm going to be marching. We going to be getting it. And I was like, ain't nobody got money. For creative strategy? No, sir. No. Like, it was the biggest reality check where I was like, okay, this is not going to be the way. And I had to actually separate my business from my passions, where I was like, yo, I am someone who has been deep in the work for a while. You know, I've done it. I've gotten to have the privilege of being in a lot of tight spaces where these things were happening. And the dudes who were also in the room with me worked at a bank, worked at City Hall, and then in their spare time, they were out here in these streets doing the work. And so suddenly I had to kind of like self-pragmaticize myself, and you just kind of come back down and say, like, yo, if you want to really make moves in an immediate time frame, you want to be able to support nonprofits, you need capital, and go where the capital is. I live in San Francisco. I was like, there's startups and VC funds and you know, tech entrepreneurs and all this stuff. It's not in the nonprofit space. But what would it look like for me? And, you know, then I started kind of playing around with what I had seen before and was like, what would it look like for me to still support nonprofit? Because that's honestly what I'm telling myself, right? Is that, like, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to be doing well enough to be able to serve and impact my community. Well, of course, the first way I thought about that was the most straightforward way. Well, let me go work for a nonprofit. But if that's not the path, well, how else can it be done? And it was like, I can gain capital. I can donate my time. I can continue to do strategy work for nonprofits as even a in-kind donation, which is a nice little tax write-off for the time that you're donating in, and come in as a sponsor. And suddenly it was like, oh, right. I remember even working in nonprofit and going to these dudes for checks. And I was like, okay, this isn't the way I thought my business was going to run. My business is going to run like a business. Let me keep my passions and hold them, invest in them, pour into them, keep them a priority. But let me genuinely look at the market as a way to gain what is necessary to make that impact. there have been times where I've looked at fundraising opportunities or working with an organization, and I'm like, they need better audio equipment. That's going to cost 15 just to, to get them what they need. Okay. I need to bring in an extra 25 this month so that I can go get them an audio system. And like, that's exactly what I wanted to do when I got started. Almost par for par, but I had to accept that business is business. And that in our society, in our economy, business serves to make money. It serves to gain capital, social, fiscal, all different types. And then you're supposed to be able to leverage that in ways that you want. And so I had to put the cart, in the proper order and keep it from being in front of the horse and say impact happens by me having the mobility to do so.
The mobility to do so. Ooh,
yeah.
For real. I hear what you're saying. And I feel like there's levels to enlightenment. I'll tell you a quick story. And for OG listeners, you already know this story. I don't know if I told you this story. I probably did. My first business, my username took off as Find Troy. My first business was Find Troy Marketing Solutions because everyone said, yo, Find Troy, that stood out. But I didn't want my username to be my moniker. That wasn't the whole point. People were so, every time I went to an event, I found Troy. Hi, I found Troy. I found you. It was cool in the beginning, y'all. But now it was like, man, now I know how child stars feel like, yo, okay, enough. We've elevated. And so I remember I just wasn't getting any business. And sometimes you got to be real with how you brand. If you are seeing it's not working, change it. So I went back to the lab. I eventually came up with Strategy Hackers as my business name. I didn't even have branding. I didn't have a website. I just had the name, and I put it on an invoice in the most basic font, and just an invoice, not invoice, I'm sorry, a proposal. And I sent it to somebody. Do you know they signed that proposal in 3 days and sent it back to me? No questions asked. Now, let me be clear. This proposal ain't nothing new. There was no new juice to it. I didn't anoint it in no blessed oil. It wasn't. It was the same proposal that got denied so many times. And I sent it and it got approved. And I'm sitting here like, what? And it was with a brand I've never thought I would work for. And here we are.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I think I'm curious how your take gonna be on this, but we got this telepathic thing going on. I think I know what's gonna happen. People of color businesses, startups, newbies, sometimes your first idea for a name of a business, how you're positioning, don't do it. It is not
on God.
It is not a manifestation of our Lord and Savior. It is not that deep. It's not going to work with the misspelled words. It's not cute. Man. It doesn't position you for bigger opportunities. It's not about being a certain tone. It's business. There's a certain tonality, positioning required for success. I don't make the rules. I don't enforce the rules. I'm just presenting to you what they are. And once I made those changes, oh my goodness. Wow, what a difference.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I know you got some.
Well, okay, so in personal story, right? Seeqer comes from the exact same place that you're talking about. That's the name of my consultancy. When I was going out to start the business, I definitely wrestled with, oh my goodness, what's the name going to be, and I didn't want it named after me. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. That feels weird. I'm not at that point in my career where I could just be like, yeah, Evante, and like run it, right? Like I was like, that felt too strong. And so I remember actually kicking it with another LinkedIn Connect. Her name's Nora, and she does branding and really works with people on names. And so we were talking about it, and I was like, listen, I'm going to be real with you, Nora. I need this thing to hit like a Chiat Day, Weirden and Kennedy, like, majority white, back in the day, these are huge white agencies, and they ran the advertising and marketing game. And for me, I was like, they became the standard in naming, right? When you look at some of the agencies out there and the consultancies out there, I was like, I needed to give that ethos much less than I needed to say, like, it's me. And so we landed on Seeqer. And like, it took a while to come up with this one word name and everything. And then she was like, I like a K in it. And I was like, no, I work in tech. We can't have all the normal letters, we've got to change one letter up. And so we made the K into a Q. A lot of my Black friends were like, what the hell? What kind of name is that? And I was like, look, man, these people out here with these checks, they love this name. Okay?
Enough said, period.
And here's the reality of it from a brand history standpoint. There are logo designers who, for better, for worse, have been the designing language for American businesses. We've got people like Paul Rand, right, who designed the IBM logo, the CBS logo. We've got pieces that look like the CNN logo, right? The names that come out of these agencies are coming off of 60 years of brand strategy and research, right? And so we have to kind of, it's one of those like, sit down, be humble. Even Black companies that have been branded and pieces like that, you'll see there are some that make it on the Madison Avenue and pieces like that. And yes, it does come down to talent, what they're doing and all these great pieces. It also just comes down to what their name is. And when you understand that every aspect, right, going back to branding, when we first were talking about perception, you knew the difference between somebody named LaDasha and someone named Evan walking into a room or seeing that name on a resume, because we all dealt with the pressure of that, especially as Black people. It's the same thing, but this time you actually have a choice. My heart breaks sometimes when I look at Black small business branding because it reminds me of like Black church branding, which isn't doing much better.
I agree.
And, you know, it also looks like Black club branding. It's you know, we got this one solid style that we've just banged out really well. But the same way that I noticed that, there are people who have been working in this industry much longer than me who also notice that. And unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, there's bias. They see that, and regardless of the value you're providing, just on a real survivalist level, regardless of the value you're providing, they may not see that under a certain name or under a little script font with a little outside glow from Photoshop. Like, stop with that. Stop that. You know, or like y'all all floating with the little color clouds around it. Stop it. Because everybody, we all know it. But man, save it for t-shirts. But like when you're doing your business, take a look at what's happening in your industry. Don't take a look at what your friends are doing. And even if you got friends in the industry, like I have a lot of people of color strategists that I kick it with. I didn't talk to none of them about the branding of my business. I talked to the people that I knew that worked with companies that were the clients that I wanted. And I essentially said, this is what I want to do. What do I need to do branding perception wise? And then I still brought my Blackness into it. Seeqer has this punk dungeon family kind of vibe to it that like a lot of people pick up off of, just like sound rattling. On the website, there's a small animation of like the text that's doing this 808 kind of like glass rattle to it. And like, that's very much me. That's still me showing up. That's still me bumping Outkast or Goody Mob every day and like being in that space. People know that if you catch me on a random day, I'm listening to Future. Like that's just how I am as a strategist. But I didn't have to put that on the name of my company. It's purple and black. That's the differentiator for me, right? Is that there aren't a lot of companies that are using this kind of lavender purple in their branding, but Seeqer does. And that we pull from a lot of sound inspiration and a lot of hip hop inspiration. But when I write strategy or production or management and I talk about the things that the company does, I talk about it the same language that I've seen IBM use, the same language that I see HP use, the same language that I see Day use, because they set the tone for the room. That is a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm not a multi-billionaire. I want to go and make that super clear. Just, I don't know if anybody was confused by that earlier, but like, I'm not, you know? And so I don't have the same weight in setting the industry conversation. Maybe one day I will, and I hope to. But even in doing so, I have to understand the context of the history that we're coming from. If you are new to logo brands, you're new to designing, take a look back at what was happening in the 60s and 70s and 80s when branding and was like really on its height. Take a look at Paul Rand. Take a look at Marty Neumeier. Take a look at some of the dudes who did the Apple logo or the Nike logo. The companies that you think of, go look at their branding and try to run something off of that because you think of that branding and you know it.
Ooh, this is going to be a great conversation. I think sometimes people think this stuff that we do is easy. I'm so sick of people.
Oh my God.
Social media is easy. Creativity. No, Some people are literally born with 10 million levels higher creativity than other people.
Yes.
And yet the people who make the final decision have no ounce of creativity in their whole soul and being, and we got to live with the consequences. Can I keep it 100 here?
Absolutely.
Like, these are the same people who people are freaking out because Walmart's new logo and the change. And they got people saying, where's the difference? Where's the change? These are the same people who, hey, are we going to rock with this new logo or are we not? Jaguar. Right. People were saying that was a big mistake. That was a big oops. I feel like you lost your being and your essence with the transfer and the change. You see all these other logos who are either consolidating or expanding. I remember GFS. We know GFS was GFS. Yeah. Like, who's Gordon's? I know it's Gordon Food Services, but it's GFS. I'm not going to tell nobody, let's go to Gordon's. Gordon's like Gordon Ramsay? Like, you got another restaurant chain going out? Like, what is happening here? And I think if the regular public can see that and they have their own opinions about that, and the culture is going to tell you, how is your little brand, respectfully, your little brand, and you think you going to just create everything in a bubble and say, this is it? You know, you shining Simba like this, your brand, and saying, this is it. This is $1 billion business. Welcome world. That's not how it works in branding. You got to follow. You showed us so much about the history and the integrity. Find your own identity within the lanes given to you. Get the capital first. Position the branding first. And I'll say this is our pivot. If you real about your business, this is not me capping. This is not even me pitching for both of us to get your business. But if you're real about business, acknowledge what you don't know and seek help where you need help. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be a good consultant if I didn't pay for other people to help me improve my business endeavors. Well, Troy, you've done branding, positioning, and strategy and marketing. Yeah, but that's not my primary. Mm-hmm. Let me be clear. We've done a lot of things out of survival because we just had to do some things to win the checks and do what we need to do. That's not my primary. I'm going to go to someone else to elevate where I'm at. So I'm elevating with Evante over here. Ooh, alliteration. Let's go. Let's get with it. And I came and I'm saying, hey, help me elevate. This is as far as I've gotten. I've hit a plateau. I need help. And for Black businesses, you have to learn to get the power to make the progress. We have to make the ask. Absolutely. We have to seek professionals to help us get there. I know you talked about, hey, the totality of who you see me as now, as a chief strategist of Seeqer, as a person that I am, came through years of development. Could you talk about your personal development on your business side and who's helped you create this narrative of who you are now?
Oh my goodness, it's such a list. Like, and just thinking
about the flowers. Let's give the flowers.
You know, the flowers, man. So like, I started in Louisiana. That's where I got my start in working in marketing. The first people to help me are also people I meet still to this day with once a month. Aileen Bennett, Ronnie Hess. Ronnie Hess was working at one of the first agencies I got to collaborate with. I went and treated me as an equal creative, where I could say, what if, and they would throw it right back at you. Justin Liu was a manager that I worked with at one point, and to this day, Seeqer wouldn't exist without this dude. When it comes to data-driven strategy, when it comes to getting out of the rat race and building something that matters, I remember it was probably 6 months into working with this guy. We were working in tech together. He was like, what do you want to do? Where you're doing good work, everything's kind of going well, but like, what are you after? Because you obviously you're hungry and you're going for something. And I was like, I want to be a chief marketing officer. And he looked at me and with the most like dismissive face was like, why? And I was like, what do you mean, why? That's the title, dog. Like, what are you talking about? Like, of course that's, he's like, but you're already doing the branding for the company. You're running market penetration. You're the person handling all of my cultural research. You're the one leading all of our ad campaigns. What else does a chief marketing officer do that you're not doing? And he's like, you just don't have the title. He's like, if you want the title, like I get, enjoy, but like, why? People like that have consistently been there where when I've thrown ideas back at them, they've kept it distilled and clear. I talked about Nora earlier as a brand strategist where I was able to talk about name. Every now and then I go to her and talk about product and services where I'm like, yo, you've been in the game a lot longer than I have. I want to make sure that I'm providing the right service at the right value and that I'm also standing firm on my pricing. And she's like, oh, here's 4 or 5 different ways you could have run this strategy to still make an equitable return on your, on someone's investment. I was like, oh, I didn't, things that I'm not aware of just because I'm new to as a solo strategist. I was talking to a chief strategist of his own, of a practice out in San Francisco, and he's had his practice for 20 years.
Wow.
He started it during the .com dive.
Not the boom, the dive.
The dive, right? And so I'm over here like, this is right where we at with social media, with Web 2. And so it felt like I was talking to a future me. And I was like, how in the world, did you do this? And he was like, well, we did this piece, but we kind of kept our heads down on X, Y, and Z. And he was like, how big is your team? And, in agency world, we'd be talking about our staff, but they're really contractors. And so like, he was like, how big is your team? And I was like, it's like 3. I was like,
had them colleagues and friends and strategists on the hotline might be 12,
I'd be calling my cousin up and be like, yo, you working on this project, right? They're like, what? I'm like, good. And like, that's the end of the conversation. He was like, I was like, yo, it's 3. They're contractors, I'm still getting started. I'm still doing this stuff. And like, I've been doing the work for a long time, but this is my first time doing it under the shingle of Seeqer. And he was like, that's how it should be. And it was like this massive weight just flew off my shoulders. Because this is a dude who got to do the multi-year repositioning for eBay.
Wow.
Who worked with Twitter, who back when it was Twitter, and like, who is, you hear the brands and you're like, oh, you a heavy hitter, right? Mm-hmm. But now you're willing to sit down and talk to me about me as a fledgling in my business, right? Understanding that I've got the years and understanding as a strategist, and now stepping into this place as a business owner, you're able to come alongside and say, no, you can do this. People like that have been critical to even the concept of what Seeqer is, me showing up in conversations about the work that I do. My first client that like rocked with me when I first started the business wouldn't be able to do it without her. Sitting back, as she's a trans advocate, she advocates for trans youth. And the conversations we had around marketing and understanding marginalized communities, us being able to bridge the gap between Blacks as a marginalized communities and the queer community, and shaping radical empathy and a marketing strategy became a really, key cornerstone point. And so now, looking at, I think this is like 18 years in marketing this year, doing production, video, other ad work on all these pieces. There's been a ton of people from day one that like I'm still in touch with who taught me how to use a camera for the first time, taught me how to do my first graphic design. And now I'm like, yo, what do you think of this billboard? And like, that's surreal for me to be able to send it back to them. But then they're still as critical. They'll be like, bro, your kerning is whack. And like, they just, they'll destroy it in that moment and have those times with it. But, I always remember that, like, I bring up the Beyonce commercial a lot. And this is to answer that question as well. When Beyonce did the halftime commercial last year, everybody lost their minds. But nobody assumes that Beyonce herself directed, scheduled, produced, lined up that commercial. In fact, she got multiple checks from that commercial, right? Because there's a CBS check, there's a Verizon check, there's, all these other pieces. Then there's the album announcement that happens on top of it. But all of those things that happen from a crew and a community, whether they be on paper as a business partner, as staff, it doesn't matter, right? There's a team and a collective grouping that's happening that comes together to make these pieces happen. So when you do see Beyonce on screen, or when you see her do her Netflix performance and you're like, wow, this is amazing. There's a stage designer, there's a set designer, there's someone running audio, there's someone running video. That whole thing lifted off the freaking floor, right? Like, there's a whole person whose job is to make sure each one of them cables don't snap. All of that happens for one person to have this amazing moment for all of us on stage. Right? It's the same thing with your business. There are people I'm sure I'm missing giving flowers to right now who are just as critical. And that's because the crew is so much. There's so many people that I've got to be able to hit up. And likewise, I'm gonna let people know all the time, like, yo, you let me throw an idea at you, feel free to throw them back at me. Let's elevate, because it has to come from that place of we can't do this alone. Right? There is no such thing as a singular hustle.
And we can't. And no one's judging you for it. You don't look weak. Collaborating and connecting. I mean, imagine if you can create that experience as a Beyonce experience to all these different potential clients. That transfers energy. You transferred energy before we became this client relationship. Now we're transferring energy back. You're on the podcast. Now we're going to transfer energy again and, referring clients, business, all the things. I think sometimes we only see linear what this is. And don't think if I just do the very best that I can, be my most authentic self, whatever makes sense, and create that connection that they remember that meant something to them. You don't know. Money looks different when you make more.
Yeah.
We have this ideology of what obtaining X amount of dollars look like.
Yeah.
When you get there or when you see someone there, it looks different because you're on the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. Once I realized I spent, and again, a lot of startups, a lot of people of color, businesses, we deal with this. We go so ham on the social. We don't have nothing else built. Ooh, you got you have 500,000 followers on TikTok and they told me they can turn the light off.
Yeah.
I have no more access to anybody on. I don't even know 10 people on that list because our memories are so bad nowadays. I don't even know who these people are. I need to have systems in the back end to do that. And when I realized, people are making money in the DMs. They're making monies in the email. Email ain't dead because they still send the email to send the contracts and sign the contracts. What's your systems in place for this stuff? And someone just had to tell me outright, Troy, I've been trying to reach out to you, but you don't have anything else in place. You don't have a branded email. These things judge you. They get you out the running. There are grants, y'all, we can get if we just have an LLC, an official website, an official business email, a Google My Business page, and an about us of what we're trying to do and be very clear about our services, products, or offerings in writing that people of all ethnicities can understand.
Yes.
We can get it, but we are too lazy. No, let me get my social up. Let me get my social up first. There's a process. There's an order of operations to do this properly and effectively. And it's also understanding what you don't know. Me giving my flowers to Angus Nelson, to Shauna Burkhart. There are people who don't look like me, who took the time to help me, not because I look like a charity case, not because I look desperate or weak. They saw the potential and the passion in me, and they said, let me help you get over the hump.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this because we are celebrating Black History Month. It's my podcast. All my podcast sponsors and affiliates and supporters have never left me. So I can say whatever I want to say because that's my podcast. That's my show. I can ask whoever I want on. I'm just flexing because it is run by a Black person. So I can talk Black if I want to.
Yeah.
I want to make this very clear. When you're trying to navigate as a Black business, you're going to need help from everybody to grow.
Absolutely.
I can't just go to the culture, to the community, and think that's enough.
Nah.
As they say, I want to be where the people are. I want to be where the money is. Show me how to get there. How do I communicate? How do I dress? Oh, I don't want to dress that way. I don't want to talk that way. Look, when you can speak green, everything else falls in line.
It's totally
everything else makes sense. But even in that, this is where I have issues. I want to grow and make money. I want to impact my community, but I don't want to lose myself.
Yeah.
And this is where you came into the picture. I'm like, and this is also where we as Black professionals sometimes need to be a little vulnerable.
Yeah.
Evante, I need help. Like, I'm stuck. And sometimes this whole hustle culture of let's keep doing it. Nah, bro, I'm stuck. This is no longer working for me. Right. I'm not reaching the people. I'm not getting the checks to the level that I want anymore. And that's scary to admit. I've done everything humanly possible within my power of learning, of studying, I need other assistance.
Right.
Sure, some of it, you can maybe get it for free. But real talk, to grow, you got to make the investment.
Absolutely.
We don't make the investment enough.
We're not told to, right? That like we're caught in the same system that we're talking about where we got to do it ourselves. And you hear these rich dudes talk, and there are not a lot of people that they're mentioning. And so it's very easy to get caught up into the conversation of, oh my goodness, I have to do this myself. At the exact same time, because you're standing alone, right? It's very easy to start taking in the culture around you and losing yourself at the same time. I got to fit into this space. I got to fit into this room. I got to talk the way they talk. I got to understand the things they're talking about. And the pressure that continues to build can feel like it diminishes you. right? It builds this pressure inside that makes people want to pop. And we've seen it. We've seen black folk crash out at work, and like when they lose it, Lord, everybody, oh my goodness. Ain't no coming back from that, dog. You already know. The question of how do you show up black? How do you show up as yourself is always one that I think as a professional you're going to wrestle with. So partially I say get comfortable wrestling with it. I think if you're not in these liminal spaces, if you're not continuing to grow, you're not going to continue to have this discomfort. Every time I got to go outside for a meeting, the question is this a hoodie meeting? Is this a field jacket meeting? Is this a polo? Like, let me figure this out real quick. You know, do I wear the J's? Do I wear the boots? You know, and like there's small things like that, but those are real pressure moments when I sit down in a room full of people and I look around the room and everybody else is in polos and I'm in my hoodie. How do I feel that I'm showing up right now? Right. And then there's also the culture parts that go along with it. So a lot of times for us, it's to one, learn what really matters. For me, ironically, it is my hoodies. And that like I will rock you wearing the blazer hoodie combo. That's one of my favorite goated looks. That's the look, bro. I'm gonna show up as a professor. I'm wearing the hoodie with the blazer. Like that's done, right? And so, you know, but like I tell people all the time, no, you ain't gonna catch me in no button up. And like, and it's that small little thing. We talked about differentiation earlier being a 2 to 3% chance. I may talk about ROI, return on advertising spending. I may talk about retention rates at a really high level. I may dive into Web3, what's happening in our investment spaces. I may talk about how we can reinvest in San Francisco at a high political level while wearing a hoodie and a blazer. And they're mystified. They're blown out of the water because one, I know who I am. I'm comfortable. I'm wearing this hoodie. Like I know who I am. I know my stuff, but I've also learned their language so well that I can speak it my way. And so for a lot of us, you know, as we're looking into how do you show up as fully black, it's not about throwing on Nuck If You Buck every time, even though like it's one of my favorite songs. And I love bringing that to the golf course, right? And messing with folk. You know, because that's the energy I'm going to bring out there. But to a boardroom, I may not show up like that. I may sit back and be the quiet dude and understand that I know why I'm here. And that one of the things that's a gift for us as Black creatives and Black professionals is that part of the reason we're in the room is our shared experience and our cultural understanding. And so rather than feeling like I need to push further to go harder, I can sit back and be like, y'all don't understand the culture. So that's why I'm here. And while I understand business and I understand marketing, I understand strategy, there's also cultural competency. And that's something that you only learn from being in the meccas of culture, which is usually where we're at. So being in those spaces and those things end up allowing me to be authentic, right? Because I know that at the end of the day, while I have to be good at my industry and my business and my specialties, the other foundational thing that everybody who comes to me is looking for is cultural relevancy. I have a friend he's a world-renowned artist. He's named as the Apexer. He's a muralist in San Francisco. And we talk about this thing of cultural IP a lot. He'll get into conversations with people around training AI to be less biased. And they'll be mystified because they're like, you're a muralist. What do you know about bias in AI? He's like, I'm a Black man in America. What do you mean? I know all about bias. And I know exactly how these systems work because I've grown up in San Francisco. That's invaluable, right? Like you can't touch that. And then on top of that, he knows how to speak business. And so like you bring those two together and you have a really authentic person showing up in a space, blowing consistently everything else out of the water while doing it in that way. But it means he only has one or two things that are differentiating him in that moment, right? And he's accepting that. It's not a fight to prove himself. He already is. And he gets to accept that. And so that's the struggle for us. And that's the continual battle is to accept that one, we are who we are. We know what we know. And also that we've experienced what we have. And all of those things come together to make a really dynamic asset for any team. And so like, yo, you want to wear a hoodie and, rock it. The only difference between a Black dude wearing a hoodie and a white dude wearing a hoodie at a corporate event is that the white dude will call himself a creative director. Like we can do that. We can absolutely do that. That takes confidence and self-assuredness, though, and not saying that I got to just fit. There's so much more that we bring to the table. And it was one of the conversations I remember us having during our sessions was like, yo, how do we bring everything that Troy is to the table and allow you to be as fluid and as flexible in any direction that you want to take your business while still being very true to yourself. And that core is important for every business owner, Black or not.
Everyone knows, tell the story when I was starting to do public speaking. I got better once I put on the hoodie. And so I'm going to make this clear to you. So I have ADHD, I realize this thing now, and comfort matters. If you don't feel comfortable in your own swagger, it's going to show. And once I was like, you know what? Button up makes me sweat. I get nervous. I feel tight. That means my presentation is going to be tight. That's just me, though. That's my personal experience. So I'm like, I'm going to wear the hoodie, put the blazer on it. And I was like, oh, this is my jam. I'm putting on Superman now. I'm Batman now.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm Black Panther now. I got to name some Black, Marvel characters. Everybody be like,
Blue Marvel right now.
Facts. Go look it up, y'all. Go look it up. For y'all who don't know, we're not capping. Look it up.
Yeah.
I digress.
Marvel.
Anyway,
that's the go.
I put that on and I'm like, oh, this is different. Then I'd be like, wow, that's your look. That's you. Yeah. And then the one time I did a black tie speaking event, I didn't wear a hoodie. People were disappointed. They're like, I almost didn't recognize you because you didn't have a hoodie and a blazer. I said, excuse me? But here's the thing. That's the joy of branding too. It could be fun. And I feel like what you did in your elegancy, you basically was like, hey, I'm going to help you put your hoodie back on your brand. So you feel comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. And once you feel comfortable with it, we can stack the layers on. I put the blazer on. I put the kicks on. Maybe I might flex a little bit, put a little hat on. I gotta come with different combos of things. I might wear the Chico's. Like now we can add layers. We can have pizzazz. We can have that stylistic as you get more comfortable with who you are. That means the stronger you can present yourself to other people. What I also think you echoed a lot, and I'm about to give you your flowers, so be prepared. This was all a trap to give you your flowers.
I know.
I respect how comfortable and confident and you're convicted you are in your resolve of who you are and how you show up in brand. And I find that so refreshing and refining. And I'm chasing after that. I was like, ooh, there's levels to this comfortability. And I know that didn't come without pain and anguish and doubt and changes in your own dichotomy of who you are as a person, as a being and everything else. But to be that most unapologetically, but still elegant delivery of who you are across the board, that's a master degree. This is part of the Masterclass episode in this whole presentation of how do we present who we are and the essence of who are, and from the words you say and the visuals and how you approach video. I remember the first time we had a conversation in the background, I was like, Homie didn't say anything yet. Skull cap on, had the bronze color lights on, the background with all the different imagery thoughtfully placed. And I'm like, I'm about to get some real good creative help here. He didn't say a word to me yet. And I already felt comfortable in my own skin and comfortable being vulnerable to him, giving him the opportunity to take lead and tell me, here's how you're interpreting, here's how it's going, here's how it's navigating. But that starts with you showing you did the work on yourself to then be able to present and help other people. And I think this is where a lot of new businesses need to want to get to, but they haven't gotten there yet because they don't know who they are yet. They don't know what makes me comfortable, what makes me uncomfortable. There's many wet paths to make the money. Just because you did a 95 in one area and in one industry does not mean that has to be your other side business or the business you're trying to go. You don't have to be in the same lane you've been all your years in. There's pivots, there's transformations. Right. We are built to do multiple things. Things transfer energy. Yeah. And one thing I think I love about you, and if you don't mind talking about the book and how hip hop aligns with everything, I'm over here thinking like, okay, does he like hit Kendrick, J. Cole, or Drake? If I hear him playing anything of that artist in the background, is this vibe a certain way that day? Yeah, like, are we going back? Which is the greatest decade in hip hop? Is it the 90s? I mean, we even dealing with mumble rap no more. I'm not going to go there in this conversation, but hey, I'm just giving y'all gems. If you're trying to get some brownie points on Evante's calendar, if you're trying to look for creative strategy sessions, brand positioning sessions, looking for speaking opportunities, the links will be in the show notes, but I'm just trying to give y'all some gems to get that sparkle with the email. I'm like, okay, let's have the conversation.
How
honestly, did you embrace that and navigate that?
It's funny, man. One, I will say, if you DM me and you drop your top five or you drop one of your favorite rappers in the DM, I'm absolutely responding to that message, like without a doubt. I got played by somebody yesterday who was like, "Do you know who the rapper of all eternity is?" And I was like, "I don't know where this is going." Like, but ship me the messages. I love them. Hip hop has been, I would say, growing. I grew up in Atlanta. And I always tell people that like the older I get, the more proud I am to be from Atlanta because it's such a chocolate mecca of excellence and history. And our through line for that was music. And so I always start there to say that like my parents are both ministers. There was no listening to rap in the house, but you best believe that like Pastor Troy, Soldier Boy, all Whoop Rico, all of that was running throughout my life regularly. And it really came to a head with Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly. For those, I don't know who doesn't know this album at this point, but for those who don't know, one of the most interesting artistic aspects of the album is that Kendrick is hosting a conversation between himself and Tupac. It's so masterfully done. It sounds like a genuine conversation. I was a freshman in college at that time. We were dealing with all the racial inequities that were happening in the world. It was this album that kind of understood the weight of leadership. And through it, it was also heavily sampling stuff that was from our past. And so I'm a history nerd. I start going back through stuff, and I'm really looking at hip hop now more as just the trend, right? And so it became this fixation that was kind of in the back of my mind that was like, this is my tie back to Atlanta, is I got rap. And I can always talk rap, and I can always go back and listen to it. And then that became East Coast rap. I was a huge Wu-Tang fan and like really getting deep into the Bronx on stuff. And then when I moved into, social impact work, hip hop became a go-to illustrator to help my friends understand the moves that I was trying to talk to them about. When we would talk about power, I say, bro, we don't need to send an email. We need to be running mixtapes on corners. And they understood immediately, like, oh, we can just get a whole bunch of flyers and pass these out. We don't need to do the centralized system. And so as I got used to teaching marketing and teaching business ethics, another way that I would show up, another version of my hoodie would be that as I would teach branding, I would bring in Gucci Mane quotes. And I'd say, he says too much of the sauce, the man is lost, right? That's your differentiation, situation right there. Not enough sauce, there's no person there, right? And so like getting to have these conversations with folks, really it continued to be an illustrator. When all of this really came to a head, I was doing some research into corporate marketing and branding and really looking at the impact of the early 2000s. There were a lot of companies that did extraordinarily large marketing feats during that period of time with smaller resources because it wasn't digital yet. And they've had ramifications across multiple industries. One of the ones that most people are now familiar with is Purdue Pharma, pharmaceutical company that was behind OxyContin. They're now closed and defunct, but they ran, I think it was like a $2 million marketing campaign in a small region of the United States in 2001. And by 2017, they're responsible for 500,000 overdoses from this one medicine. And what it came down to, right, as we look at the pill, we look at these things, one of the things we don't look at is the marketing. We don't look at the sales brochures that were given to the doctors that said this pill is safe. We don't look at what the sorority girls were trained on what to say to people and that there was someone who wrote a script. And so for me, as I was sitting there, I was like, wow, that's my job. I'm the strategist who writes those pieces of copy for companies. What is the ramifications and the consequences of my work that I can't see? And in this kind of moment of crisis, right, of like, being like, wow, I want to continue to work in marketing. I love the work that I do. I love telling stories and building campaigns, but the reach is so much larger than a small region of the United States, right? I was like, with $2 million, you can run a sizable global campaign. Like that's, things have changed. And so I fell back into, well, what matters? And I ended up going back to Yasin Bey and going back to like true hip hop. And he has this statement where he says, hip hop's going to be all right because we're going to be all right. But if we're struggling, hip hop is struggling. And suddenly I was like, oh, hip hop isn't just this art form, but it's kind of a thermometer for us as a culture. And why is that? And it's because it's built off of older music. It's built off of sampling. It's easy to do. It was the TikTok of that generation in the 80s was rapping on top of music. And suddenly it was like this bell just like went off in my head. And it was like, yo, the struggles that the industry has had with hip hop of trying to commodify its full potential. Right. We've seen this dance from Tommy Boy to Universal Music Group. We saw it with mixtapes and then 50 Cent and then streaming and Napster and like all this stuff and SoundCloud. And that we continue to produce music through a multitude of means, even if the industry says this is the one way. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful. This is how we move as culture. And as a marketer who wants to speak to the culture and serve the culture and better the culture rather than taking it down, then I want my strategies to reflect that same historical ethos where I pull from what's been done before, right? And I get to say, let's add the flip on that. Let's pull Paul Rand, let's pull up his book on design and whatever, and those pieces and see what was happening and then be critical, right? And speak to it. And so rap, as much as it became a consistent like comfort, listening to Killer Mike, Michael's one of the greatest rap albums we've had of the last decade. And listening to that is comfort just because he's an Atlanta rapper. But there's another part of this that speaks to how to make moves as a business folk in community and in collaboration to keep moving when things are tough, to pull forward. And so it's really become the backbone of Seeqer, of my work. It's what led to me writing Power Beats and Rhymes and publishing that last year, which is a book that really explores that dynamic I'm talking about between Purdue Pharma and hip hop of saying like, here's how we deal with these situations, and that we've always had that answer, going back to the writings of Baldwin and Audre Lorde, all the way to Bell Hooks to hip hop. It's always been this consistent thread of collaboration, community, and working together to build something that resonates.
And for those who don't know, Power Beats and Rhymes Reclaiming Our Cultural Voice is available on Amazon. The link will be in the show notes. Go buy it. Let us know how you feel about it, all the things. But to dive into that more, I think, this brings us back to modern day. We're in 2025. Yep. DEIBA is like, ooh, I don't know. And I think back to 2020. I remember where I was with George Floyd. I remember at 9 minutes. I remember of all the times I've had the most people reach out to me to talk on the business podcast, all these different things. And I'm like, look, I am trying to process what happened.
Right.
And at the time, I separated my business acumen from my personal experience. I always kept about marketing, social strategy. I didn't interject my experiences as a Black man. I didn't even interject, I've had 3 brain surgeries. I was born 2 pounds, 2 ounces, 3 months premature. I didn't talk about all the other different things that I navigate. I always kept it separate in this moment. I don't know. And I will never get this. I had someone in my DMs tell me, because I was complaining to them about it, and I was like, I don't want it this way. Because we sometimes as people of color, sometimes we want it a certain way. I don't want it that way. I have a certain way I wanted it. I don't want the grant. I want the money given to like pay this. I'm like, take the grant. Get out the hole first. You can throw a rope and help other people get out.
Yes.
Get out the hole.
Yeah.
So she telling me, it don't matter if the only reason you at the table is because you Black. First, you complain about you're never at the table because you are Black. Then you get a chance to be at the table because you're Black, and that's not good enough for you either, Troy. Are we serious right now, brother? Straight up, who cares the reason why you're here? Now that you're here with the mic, with the platform, say whatever it is that you need to say.
Yeah.
And then the last thing they told me, and I had to sit with this one. You may be scared, tired, confused. Think of all the people who inspire you, who are empowering you, who you reference all the time. I want to be like them. They paved the way. You think they wanted to have the things they wanted to do and tolerate what they tolerated and switch and pivot when they had to switch and pivot or adjust to insurmountable odds against them? You think they just wanted to do that? Yeah. Oh, no, honey. But they had to. They showed up when they were tired. They showed up when they knew injustice was happening. And this is where I challenge a lot of people. I know you tired. And when we say we tired, especially my Black women, I know we're tired. But for us to shut down doesn't help our communities, doesn't help the businesses, and doesn't help the generations coming behind us. We have to be cognizant and aware of our value and not giving up. And when she told me that, I said, okay. And I started talking about my experience. I interjected business and marketing. I even talked about, Troy, why did you start a podcast? I started a podcast and I did 100 episodes with just me as a solo host for the sole reason because, oh, I need you all to understand marketing from my voice, from my experiences. I want you to feel like you at the barbershop get marketing game, strategy game, creative game, because I know the people, I don't know marketing, I don't know strategy, I don't know business. I want to be a chef. I want to launch my clothing line. I want to help people with taxes and accounting. I want to design these different things. I don't know nothing about marketing strategy. And that's where I want to help people. That's why I started the podcast. And I didn't want anyone else on. And people got mad because of it. I said, you tell me any top marketing podcasters that are black that aren't guests that you hear once every blue moon, whether it's Black History Month or some other random occurrence to show that they are culturally sound. I'm waiting, tell me. So no, I'm going to create the space in the first place to show what's possible. Then I'm going to handpick every single person who's going to have on a show because they're vetted. They're not here because, I got a book. No. Do I have a relationship with this person? Do I know you'll be valued to this person? So y'all know if I bring someone on as a masterclass episode, they've already passed the vibe check. They are highly qualified. They're ready to serve. Y'all need to pay them money for their services. Top dollar, I might add, but they're going to give you value. So that's why you're here. And we're grateful that you are here. You've been spitting game this whole time. I can't wait to tell more people about the game that's been spitting. But I do want to ask your thoughts on this one question and how we're going to get deep, y'all. So prepare yourselves. I'm giving y'all 3 seconds to just bring it on down. It's about to get real. When it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness, how do you weave that in? Yes, I use the word weave. How do you weave that in to a business from your perspective that would be appreciated by the culture? And you can take this however you want. I just want people who think they're doing it or have considered it or haven't finished it or made the PR announcement, but we waiting 3 years and we still ain't seen the fruits of that labor to sit down and take notes on what's about to be said.
So I would tell a story that is a perfect illustrator of this moment. When I was working at tech, I worked at this company that was a job board. This was in the middle of the pandemic, specifically what we called the Great Resignation. A lot of people were leaving their jobs, trying to find what mattered. And at the same time, there weren't a lot of jobs that were hiring. Working at a company that essentially promised to connect people with jobs was the crux, right? It was like this whole thing. And my question as the marketer, as the culture guy, was how do you get people to trust a brand they've never heard of, to give up their cell phone, their email, their name, their address, everything that's on someone's resume? And I was like, that's a lot of information. Like, how do you get somebody to do that? And we did market penetration in a couple of places around the country. And in one city, one of the things I did is I said, let me come in a week early. And I just want to do some interviews with people and just ask them how things are going in their community, how they're feeling about the job market, what are the big concerns about. And they said, well, we're hearing that all these companies are promising us jobs, but they're not showing up anywhere else. And so we don't trust them. And so I took it back to my team. And as a black man who was talking to a lot of black people, I'm not going to say that the survey was biased, but like I did lean. And so I came back to my team and I was like, in my mind, in my impact passion, I'm like, man, there's a lot of work we can do here. There's so much work that we can do right here. And I remember going back to Justin, the boss I mentioned earlier, and I told him about it. And he was like, okay, so what? And I was like, well, there are a lot of people in need. They're looking for jobs. What do you mean? And he was like, what does that have to do with our retention rate? What does that have to do with our acquisition? I was like, okay, like I get what you're asking. What he was trying to point at, he was like, how does this tie back to our revenue? How does this tie back to the point in all be all of our return and investment in the next 3 months? And at first I couldn't answer that. It took a couple of days, did some research, and I came back and I said, hey, look, here's the social program. I've got an idea. We're going to run a free class at the university in the city, and we're going to run a resume course for 3 weeks for free. The way you get in is by signing up for the app. We're going to have these companies who are available, have a job fair, and we're going to partner with Big Brothers, Big Sisters to actually get people to join the app as they're graduating high school, going into college, or some of the part-time jobs that we now are filling in on this app. So suddenly he's like, you've created an in-person funnel of all these people are coming in. They're going to sign up for the app. We're going to have a couple hundred come through over these next couple of weeks, and they'll be sharing it because we'll have social media stuff. And I was like, and we'll bring a video company through. They'll film it. So we then have a video piece that we can then use that shows that we're in the community. And then on top of that, we'll be able to run it as an ad and, give them all these marketing things. And like, Did it feel kind of skeevy at first? Absolutely, right? Because I'm like, yo, I want to help these people, but also like this is a photo opportunity and we need to get everything we possibly can. And the program was approved within a day. They were like, yeah, sure. You were able to tie it directly to the amount of users that we should get, and you showed us that this cost was actually less than an ad that we would run in the area. So yeah, why not? We'll do a social program. They didn't care about it being a social program. They didn't care about it being people of color. They didn't care about it helping marginalized people. What they cared about was business. What they cared about was revenue and return on investment. We're in this space right now where a lot of shareholders are looking at DEIB, and their argument for the harsh reality is that they do not see a return on investment coming from the program. They see it as a liability and as an expense. So they're cutting it. And so for a lot of us, it feels like we're being told, no, there is no diversity, equity that's going to happen here. It still can, but it happens through clever marketing. These, and I'm gonna be just blunt because I can't find the other words around it. Look, man, if you want to find an organization that's gonna go care about people, go work at a nonprofit. Every other business that has a P&L, that does quarterly sheets, that does earnings reports, that's their goal of existence, is to make money. Right? Anything that we can do as people of color, as marginalized groups, as ingenious marketers to help that company make a difference in the world, we can't, unfortunately, lead with the altruism of this will make the world a better place. Because that's not how business works. And on a reality level, there's a cost to making the world a better place. And there's staffing, there's time, there's capital. And so from a base Excel spreadsheet point of view, you could type it out yourself. You could say, what is all necessary to make this thing happen? What's the return that the company is going to get? When we want to make diversity, equity, and impact decisions on governance and policy, our internal culture, we have to tie it back to the key performance indicators of that company. And one of the things that was an unfortunate side effect of all of these companies diving billions into a postured DEI program for the last couple of years is that no one tied it to a P&L. Because they said, sit down, shut up, and be here. And so now these programs are being cut because they were there for posture. And that's the sad truth of it. That doesn't mean that we don't have an ability to give these companies what they need to make impact. But for us, when we want to make impact, we got to remember that this is business. And that at the end of the day, as much of a bleeding heart as I am, and I get deeply passionate about caring for our folk and showing up in the right ways, I also have to accept that these people that I'm talking to are not me. They don't come from my background. They don't know the people that I know. They didn't grow up hearing the stories that I heard. Their grandparents weren't marching where my grandparents were marching. So this is personal for me. And I've got to understand that and take that passion of making it personal and go, I need to speak your language. If I want to sell you on this idea of making a difference, I need to market this to you just as well as market it to the people, right? And so it's twofold. We can do all of these amazing things to these companies. A lot of these companies actually have funds set aside for small experiments and activations or brand things or whatever the heck you want to call it to go do this stuff in communities. But if we don't tie it back to revenue and profit, then they have no incentive to move on those things. And then when it comes to the next year and they're looking back over their budget and they see, ooh, well, there was this fund that we didn't do anything with. Well, then, of course, you're going to cut it because you didn't do anything with it. It's a tough way of moving through this world, right? But it's the cruel reality that we're in. Like these programs isn't cutting down the avenue of the road for us. And I think it also has to come down to some real black mess and to say, look, you look into an institution to save you. That's not how we do things. It's culture and community all day, every day. If you want to make these impacts between your businesses and helping serve the community, you can do that. But you can't look to them to drive the cart. It's us. And unfortunately, it's always been us. And like, I know, like Troy, like you said, we're tired. But there was a time when we were pushing the cart and the best option in our minds was to be slaves at another plantation. We've come a long way from there. The drive is still going on. But it's not going to happen through these programs that are being thought of by people who are not us, or be created in a department for a company that's not run by us. And even if it is, it's got to follow the same industry bars that we're talking about, from naming your company and the branding around it. If you want to make that impact, the way you make it sexy and the way you make it sell is by making it profitable. And that doesn't mean taking advantage of us. Doing that whole thing of doing a resume course and actually getting to help our people in that town and say, like, yo, here's how you write your resume. Here's how you need to show up for this. Let's do practice interviews. Bring your resume through. I'll edit it. If that takes, you can ask staff to even volunteer their time to build that program out. It's still a win for the company. And at the end of the day, I get to look back at that campaign and say, man, we helped over 500 folks understand in like a weekend how to write a real resume. And then we were able to go to all of the companies, all the employers around, and say, yo, we got 500 people on the app in a day. You want to be on here, pay us, and business is thrilled.
We don't realize how DEIB, I said this, diversity, equity, inclusion, belongingness does equal revenue. Yeah. I will stand on that, 10 toes, whole body, whole soul on that. That's real. People don't realize, I did a talk, $3.7 trillion is the generational buying power of Black people. And you mean to tell me, for all the times, no, you didn't create the spaces and the messaging and the marketing and the positioning for them to see themselves, to feel included, to have incentivized to buy. I always tell a lot of these businesses all the time when they bring me in sometimes is, have you considered just expanding who your storytelling is? Have you considered, and not in a rainbow coalition, just type of way, but have you considered demonstrating the different narratives on your marketing campaigns and seeing the different audiences will buy from you? Sometimes it's not about making a new product. It's just literally let me expand it to a wider audience. And the other thing to think about in all of this, I look at the brand Calendly.
Yeah.
Like, I think for the longest time, nobody knew that business was created by a Black person.
No idea.
But there were signs, though, especially when it rebranded. There was signs. But for oh yeah, I rock with Calendly. Oh, we penetrating. And even how they grew their business from a brand positioning.
Right.
You treat it like, oh, okay. And then one day you're like, oh, that's a Black founder? Mm-hmm. Y'all was already subscribed, running with Calendly. Y'all didn't even know. Y'all didn't even know.
I had no idea.
That's still branding, though. There's levels to this thing. And I think there's not a one set way pathway to how you want to position in the beginning. It doesn't mean you can't go back in once you made your money, once you made your position, once you built the network and the community and connections, to then expand or do something else with it.
Absolutely.
I think many of us have that heart and soul that we want to make change right away.
Right. But there's also separate yourself from your business. Look at Everett Taylor and Kickstarter. We are in the era of the founder. And I think if there's anybody who can run a powerful story right now, it is marginalized people. I'm working with an amazing woman out of Hungary right now on her brand, and she has a women's health company. And when I say that, talking to her about how revolutionary this is going to be for women's health and having the conversation, I'm like, yeah, as much as we're doing company branding and we need to talk about the company, we need to brand the company properly. Yes. But you also need to stand on your story and understand that there's a distance between you and your company that needs to be there, because you're a human being and the company's a company. But like now, as a Black owner, that's the joint, right? I haven't posted much for Seeqer on social media because, one, I'm not going to do that. That's just not how this business is going to run. But also, like, my personal social media, you see me, I'll be wilding on LinkedIn, posting memes, making everybody else
go follow him, man. Y'all, you will not regret it. You will not regret it. Especially the post you've been doing recently had me in tears. But anyway, I digress. Continue.
You appreciate that MLK one, huh? And so, you know, people, when I go into rooms, there was a time where I was afraid that as a founder and as an owner, that was going to be a problem. And someone's going to be like, you out here doing all this other foolishness. I was like, no, but if you send me an email and it comes from Seeqer, it comes from my Seeqer email, it's going to have professional language and tone because I'm a professional. That's social media, right? And we're now at a place where that distinction is clear and becoming clearer. And so if you try to hold to your Blackness, right, and try to figure out how you're going to navigate the branding, not everything has to go through your company. Some things can just be from you. and from your perspective, right? And that means that the company doesn't have to hold the whole weight of showing up as you. Like there's so many different jobs and lives that I feel like I went through, from Louisiana and Atlanta and marching and doing all this other stuff before I got to tech and then agency, and then I'm doing my own thing. Most people don't know about all that, and they ain't gonna know about all that. That's fine. What they know is that I'm this goofy dude on LinkedIn who is like write about marketing and then post black memes. Like that's what they know. And then they meet the company and they're like, wow, you actually know ethnography. You actually know audience development and market insights and trends. And that's what your business is built around. Right. And so Seeqer is known for cultural competency, is known for market insights and trends. Evante is known for the same thing, as well as hip hop, rap, all this other stuff that's going on, memes, foolishness, good food, right? Like I can have all those different areas to me, and the company doesn't have to hold all that weight. My favorite thing was when it came out that Calendly was founded by a Black folk. We're out here, and we're finally in a place where it's not a terrifying thing for the CEO to be a person online or the owner to be real. Mm-hmm. And so be real. Don't be wilding, but like be real. Watch what you put on your stories, because like people can see that, and what you like, people can see that. But like outside of that, be real. And you can be real, and then understand when your company should say it and when you should say it.
Could you imagine if we would rep Black fashion brands like we do Louis Vuitton? We want to be all these things, but if we would rep people of color brands like we do other brands that have no affinity.
Yeah.
They don't, it's not like they're giving to charity until they're called out to us. Right. But they got part of the culture, and we just pay their money, give their money. They know they get an X amount of checks from us, and that's the dance we play. But then people of color who are doing, oh, you're not like them. Who you trying to be? And we shut people down before they get started. Let's do better so we can be better.
I went to Essence this year, and this was one of my favorite Black branding moments. So I was there with a client, and when I'm on a day for a shoot, my head is on a swivel. I'm picking up everything that's happening around me. I'm trying to figure out all the different content that we need to be gathering, photos, videos. I got my cameras on me, all this stuff. And as I'm looking around, I'm seeing these really nice shirts that say M-Line on them, EMLINE. And it's in this heavy embroidery. And, I saw the first one. I was like, oh, that's kind of clean. And like saw another. I was like, oh, okay. Like 5, 6, 7. And like dudes just wearing them. Then somebody gets up on stage. M-Line. And so at this point, I'm like, all right, now who is this brand? Because I've never heard of this brand, but I can tell on the Jumbotron that the embroidery is quality. And so some dude walks past me, and I'm like, hey, blood, what is this? Yo, like break this down for me. He's like, oh man, it's this New Orleans owned brand, Black owned streetwear brand. And he's like, and we just fell in love with them a couple of years ago. They did an Essence exclusive t-shirt, all this stuff. To this day, the t-shirt, when I wanted to like really flex on folks and like pull out my Blackness and be like, nah, I'm winning today, I'll bring out my M-Line shirt. And like I tell people all the time, it's like, there's never going to be a Louis Vuitton that touches this, because I know it's Black owned from New Orleans. And then you know how drip works. If you got it and ain't nobody else got it, then you got it.
Like, you got the whole story too. You're gonna tell that story till the cows come home.
Right, come on out, right? And so I'll be out in San Francisco, and they're like, "Oh, that's nice. Where'd you get that?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I don't know about this, right? This is M-Line, right?" But like, we have that power. We show up on social media. A brand is a brand is a brand. At this point in the world, the difference between Louis Vuitton and M-Line is the amount of followers and their marketing budget. Real talk. You support who you want to support. And now that you understand that as a leader, as a CEO, as an executive, as a business owner, that people do look to you, whether you're a thought leader or a subject matter expert or not. If you're just out here, people still looking to you because you're bringing in clientele, you're building services. You don't have to brag, but the same way that they be walking in with a Birkin bag, you can walk in with an M-Line jacket on. Mm-hmm. And suddenly you're putting on Black folk, right? You're putting on the Black culture in a way that they already love, because that's what happens. They go, oh my God, I've never seen that before. Where do I get that? And suddenly we're talking about it in the same breath of luxury brands. There's so much power we hold in cultural capital. And it's not that things have to be ridiculously expensive or all these pieces. It's not to say that you buy everything that's Black owned, because stuff still has to be quality, right? You check things, you do your research, you do your stuff. But when you find something, grab it, run it, and understand the power that you have without having to flex on it, and just wear it and be able to go up on stage and be like, someone's going to ask, where'd you get that shirt from? Someone be like, yo, I've never seen a blazer like that. Where did you get that? And now we're giving money back to our own people, building economic mobility. And we're building a brand around ourselves as someone who supports local business and supports BIPOC businesses or women-owned businesses or whatever that angle is going to be. That builds out that multidimensional narrative that we've been talking about this whole time.
What should people know about your business, and what's the goal? How are you impacting? How can the listeners help you impact what you're trying to do with your business?
So the goal of my business is to help as many companies as possible build future-proof brands. That's my passion and joy, is that we're in an era where the phone, what I say is the 16:9 media ratio for my TV nerds out there, we're at the death of that in the next couple of years. And the question of what comes next is going to be a combination of a lot of different devices, and not a lot of brands are having those conversations around how do we prepare for this from a cultural point, from a media and communications point. People who are interested in beginning that conversation for their company are curious around everyday things they can even do at a smaller level to begin activating and preparing for that. I'd love to have those conversations with you. Also, if you're in a place of repivoting and you're trying to understand really where you can go from here, or you're like you said earlier, where we're at the end of our own foresight, right? And you need that outside perspective. Hopping on a quick chat and being able to do that is always great. If you know people who are trying to bounce those ideas around, I'm always looking to connect with new folk, especially on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'm on at Evante Daniels on both of those platforms. And my DMs are always open.
Evante, brother, I appreciate your light, your power, and your swagger. Like,
Appreciate
top
that,
tier.
bro.
Top
Thank you, bro.
tier swagger.
Thank you.
I hope that the listeners appreciated this series of episodes that just encapsulate us on, we can be better, and here's how to do it. And, if I really need to do it, I need to drop them dollars and slide into some DMs and say, hey, can you help me elevate, future-proof my brand, help me with my alignment, my brand positioning to align with who I am or the multitudes of who I am? How do we elevate our business? How do we position everything accordingly for better opportunities? For amplifying social as the platforms change, as they go offline, they don't go offline. But if you have a proper content strategy system, you ain't gonna flinch. I'm just going, shoot, we were talking before all this happened. You already was giving us game. We was already in the DMs talking about like, okay, this is a 3-part strategy. We're doing like Trojan horse tactics on this stuff. And I would have been like, okay, and TikTok is now no longer here. Okay.
Right.
Evante already got me straight. Seeqer saw the future and set it up for me. I ain't skip a beat with anything on social. But
we like to
if
hear.
you don't get the right people to navigate that, how are you going to move? How are you going to move out here in these streets? The platforms are changing every day. What are we going to do? Do you have an email sequence? But it doesn't matter if it's email, if it's social, if it's in person, if it's virtual. If you don't know how to communicate, if your brand isn't together, if you're not culturally sound, if you don't know what your comms etiquette is, if you don't know who you are as your identity, if you don't know who your audience personas are, your ICP, nothing else matters. Evante can't even help you until you list some things out. We can't.
You gotta at least tell me where you want to go. You gotta at least tell me where you want to go.
He asked me, y'all, I literally do this for a living. I have a book here. We both have books. We've done these things. I do this for a living. And when he asked me that, I became a puppy, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know, because I hit a plateau. I hit a wall where I'm like, where do I go from here? We think it's easier when we're starting out, but when you get into the real decisions of money and business, and you're trying to get that extra zero or zeros, or go into uncharted territories, or you're starting to integrate AI, and you may not even know what Web3 even is yet still. And you're dealing with all these other things. You just now trying to tap into what ChatGPT is, what Gemini is, what Clive is, and all these different things. We can go back into that. Maybe we'll have Evante back and we can double down on that experience, throwing that seed in there. Yeah. But even nevertheless, if you don't have this stuff together to align, how are you going to move? How are you going to have those conversations? And sometimes it's, let me pay the brother to tell me what I don't know about my own brand positioning. So I can do the work to come back. Hey, I'm ready. Let's move this forward.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just as simple as that. And you never know. He may hear you like, hey, I'll give you a free 20-minute game to get you started. Come back to me. We'll do a dance. And let me tell you, I don't make investments if I don't see the value, and it didn't take long. If you're a person who's trying to bring in more Black businesses as consultants or part of your team, sub team, sometimes they're just as good as they say they are, and just rock with it. And that's it. Let me tell y'all how to be a good client to a Black business. Can I do that for 10 seconds and show some love?
Please.
We had the conversation. I had a gap. I communicated during that gap. Hey, something just happened. I'll swing back with you. We ain't flinch, we ain't push. He was very casual. Sent me another message, reminded me of everything. So sometimes your blessings is you don't have them systems, or you don't take the time to remind people, hey, you was once interested in me. Are you still interested? And where do we go from here?
Absolutely.
Simple. All love, all great. Came in, told me the finance, locked that thing in, paid the brother his money up front, whatever the arrangement was. We did our thing. He delivered. It wasn't, I'm waiting. Hey, where's my stuff at? What's going on? He's doing his thing. I'm doing my thing. We circle back. We've had 4 multiple conversations on the planning, on the infrastructure. He made sure I understood. Even after the last payment was sent, I sent the payment when it was supposed to be due. No questions, no gap, no ghosting. Because I feel you got to do businesses right the same way you want to be received if you can. I already knew the pricing. I made the budget work. I made the investment because I knew I needed it. There was nothing. I think sometimes we get that, but the money, you make the investment and you see what happens. And then it's up to me now to do the work from what the investment has. And so here we are having this engagement, having this conversation, and the flow was great. I ain't questioned nothing. I'm leaning. I'm here to eat. I'm here to learn. I'm here for you to guide me and lead me and tell me you are fully empowered to be as vulnerable and as transparent as possible. That's how you get to maximize the best of a consultant and a strategist. And I came in knowing I have the years of experience. I got a good rap sheet, but I'm vulnerable. Evante. I don't know how to do this in branding. I don't know how to pivot. I've hit this plateau where I need to reset. I need to realign. And he took me under his wing and just told me what it was. And sometimes what I had to hear was a little hard to hear. It was a little tough, but it was tough love. And you know what? I embrace that. And every day I can hear his voice saying, okay, do this, do that. You do this, do that. And it's like, okay. And this is how, if you're a person who got the money, who's ready to make the investment. Here's my pitch, y'all. Here's my pitch right now to y'all. This is all about Black Christian. It's all about empowering Black businesses. If you have the investment money, if you've been struggling with how do I position my brand, if you're trying to future-proof your brand, if you're trying to elevate your social presentation, your comms, your media, if you're trying to bring all your assets together under one conglomerate that makes sense of your whole totality of your identity, go to Seeqer. Go check them out. Go to LinkedIn. See his content. Replay these episodes if you need to. But I mean, I got enough validation. Just take my word for it and go do it today, like right now. Like click that link. You know, while we still listen to the episode, click the link, put the calendar link, have the conversation, see what happens. And I guarantee you will not be disappointed. So again, Evante, we appreciate you being on the show, dropping his gems, dropping his wisdom. Is there any final words you would like to share?
No, man, I really appreciate being on the show. Thank you for having me on. I just remind people that branding is a process. You don't have to arrive tomorrow. That's the joy of working with a strategist, right? You on the front lines, you in the trenches. Running a business is trench work. And so it's okay to not be everywhere all at once tomorrow. It's more important that you arrive one day.
And on that note, we out, y'all. Peace.
Peace.